Hi everyone, I'm Bob and I'm renovating a 1973 Egg Harbor Sportfish boat, which is the white thing back there behind me. Alright, now that we've made our way to the boat, you can see what lies at the end of our path. And there it is. That is the original door for the boat, and that's going to be the subject of this video. So this is the only picture I actually have of the door before I started working on it. You can see it was painted on the outside, and I started working on it in January of 2019, and I didn't start the YouTube channel till May. So the clip you're going to see next was probably the first clip I ever did in preparation for YouTube. So this was like January 2019, and as you can see, the door's been basically stripped down of its paint on the outside. It was about 3 layers of marine grade paint on there. I tried chemicals, that didn't work. Ended up using a heat gun, and you're seeing probably like the last little bit of primer coat. Some of the joints were loose. I re-epoxied all the joints, and on the bottom of the panel there on the right side, you can see where it was kind of a rot hole in the panel and in the frame. Back side here, I still hadn't stripped the varnish yet, but I used a heat gun to do that too, as you can see by that spot. That came up pretty easy. And one of the oddities of the door was that they cut the whole bottom off and put this piece in. It's actually 3 pieces of horizontal wood here. And the wood looks pretty good, and they did a good job with the joints in the wood. I don't know what kind of wood it is, but I think it might be mahogany or teak. But the problem with it, you'll see when I flip this down, is they didn't plane it down evenly before they installed it. So at the hinge, it's a lot thinner than at the bottom. So I had to do a lot of work to get this to be all the same thickness. So the grand plan here is really to build a brand new door. But in the meantime, I wanted to try to save this one and actually varnish the exterior side of it. Now, the most tedious process of this whole thing was after I sanded it here, going in with an X-Acto blade and trying to get the little paint chips out of the grain. It was many hours spent doing that. I want to cut a little off the top, because the top is tapered for some reason. It's not square. I don't know if that was a factory thing or if the previous owner did that for some reason, but I want it to be square like a normal door. So I got to cut that. And then I'm going to cut on the hinge side here, I'm going to cut enough off to delete the mortises that are there for the hinges, so I don't have to deal with those when I put an extra 1/2 inch piece of wood on here. And it also, when the door's in the opening now, the bottom and the lock side are square and square with the opening, but this side is not square with the opening. So I have to cut. This is not only is it going to be cut to get rid of the mortises, it's going to be a taper cut to get it to be all square all the way around and fit in the opening. And I want to have it that way before I put pieces on the edges, and I can measure how thick they're going to be. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, now that that side is done, now I gotta cut the top off here, and you can see a line. It's pretty tapered on the top. It's kind of weird, but I'm gonna cut it right at that line, route it, and then we'll be done with this and we can bring it over to the boat. Now the next thing was to add some pieces to the edges. I need about a 1/2 inch thick piece on each side. I attached this one on this side, this is the hinge side, last night. Couldn't do both of them at the same time because they kind of move around and stuff. I'm not using any screws or anything to hold them in place. I'm just epoxying them on there. So I've got that side done. I'm going to put the piece over here on the lock side. On my table saw, I ripped down some pieces of mahogany. You get the pleasure of watching me install this one on the lock side. Alright, so there you have it. Okay, so as you can see, I've sanded down these pieces I added on the exterior side of the door, and that wasn't too difficult because I basically didn't have them sticking up very much. So it was just a little bit of sanding with my hand sander, my little hand palm sander. And then I brought the door over to the boat yesterday just to see how it fit. And it was pretty tight fit. I mean, I had to sand a little bit here and there to actually even get it in there. And I got it in there so good, and I probably tried to pull it out. I actually got it stuck in this bottom corner here. Well, I couldn't get it out, and I yanked on it, and it came out, and I heard a little bit of a crack, and it actually hit the top of it, hit the piece of trim around the opening, and this whole little corner right here cracked, and cracked like right in here. So I had to epoxy that on there last night. You can't even really tell, but needless to say, I wasn't too happy about that. Once I sand the other side, I haven't sanded it yet, I'm going to just put a straight edge over here and route off about a 1/16 of an inch or so. That'll be kind of the door gap, at least to start with, and at least I'll be able to get it in there and fit the hinges and stuff like that. Well, here we are after bunch of sanding. It didn't really take me that long, actually. It probably took me about 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes. This side was the easier side. I just sanded it down with my orbital sander until it was kind of close, and then finished it off with my hand sander. Same thing with this side, except for this side I just had to spend a little more time because it was so high. But this is the area that was really bad. It's looking, it's looking how it's going to look, I guess. Okay, so I was all set to actually buy some new hinges for this door, and said, well, I'll dig up the old ones, and these are the old ones, just to see for sizing. And this one I actually cleaned up, and it looks really good. What I like about it is it's very sturdy, and some of the stuff I've been looking at online and on websites and things, some complaints sometimes that they're not as well built as some of the old stuff, and it probably is true. They're a little flimsy, they say, but these are pretty thick metal, and they're very sturdy, and they're not flimsy, and they're not falling apart. The hinge pin is really tight in there, so I think I want to reuse these because they clean up pretty nice. So this is how I stored them. Just labeled it and put some tape on there. I actually taped all the screws in there. I'll put new screws in because these screws are just old, and I'm not going to spend time polishing screws. We'll undo this here. And this is kind of how they are. The back side's got some varnish on there. And the front side has this scaly stuff on it, and some paint, things like that. Trying to get this to look like this one. So on the other one I started with a Scotch-Brite pad, and I think it scratched it a little bit. Probably could have got something a little less. It's not even a rough one. But I'm not going to try starting with that this time. If I have to resort to it, I will. I'm going to try starting with this metal polish and just see what it does, because it's probably a lot less abrasive than that Scotch-Brite pad, I'll tell you that. So it's working pretty good. There's this one, like I said, it's got a little more bubbling in the chrome. So this one is not going to come out as nice as the other one. To get the paint off, I just use this. This is like a little brush. I got this in a pack of 3. Came with this copper one, a stainless one, and a plastic one. But I found that it kind of takes the paint off pretty good, and it doesn't really scratch the surface any more than the Scotch-Brite pad. And it doesn't really get all the paint off, but it does a pretty good job on it. Actually, where they overpainted it, actually protected the chrome a little bit. I just heat it up a little bit. I don't have it on a high setting, but I just kind of heat it up. Heat it up a little bit. Nothing's going to be hot. I can't touch it. I don't feel like putting on a glove, but I'll use this one. More polish on that thing. Looks pretty hot still. And that's probably as clean as it's going to get. Like I said, this one has a lot more pitting on it in this area. That's not going to come out. There's no way. Okay, so here's the 2 pieces finished. This is the one I just did. This is the one I did before. This one has more pitting, like I said. That's probably as clean as that's going to get. The back sides clean up a lot better, just because they weren't exposed to the weather like the other sides. So the chrome is still nicer on these. But this'll work. Let's go try fitting this door. Alright guys, well there it is, sitting in the opening. And really happy with the fit. I'll zoom in on the bottom here first. Now I left these little extensions I put on a little long on the bottom. So they actually form, you can see the gap there. It's like a 1/16 of an inch gap. So I don't have to put any spacers or anything. And once I get the door situated, I can just sand those off, once I get the hinges mounted. But you can see here, it's pretty tight on this side. It's a little bit of an opening down at the bottom, and the same at the top. But I think that's more the trim and my over sanding the trim there than the actual opening. but it's really tight in the middle, and then at the top it's a little like that too. So I don't know. We can fuss with the door after I get the hinges on, I think. And then on this side, there's like a perfect gap on this side the whole way. So that's why I don't want to touch this side at all. I'd rather work and mess with the hinge side. If it's too tight in the middle, I'll probably just sand it in the middle, but to make it look even. But this side is like perfect gap, so that's how it wears now. I'm not sure what I'm going to do at the bottom here. This is like the little tray on the sill where the water, if it does get by the seal, it's supposed to sit in that tray. That little channel there, and then drip down these holes right here. That's kind of where it sits. And I just copied the old sill, so that's a little weird. I'm not sure how I'm going to seal this. I'm thinking of maybe just putting a piece on with one of those little pieces, sweeps that comes down. And any water that gets by and comes down, the sweep will kind of stick into this trough here, and it'll drip down into the trough and then go. But yeah, of course, if the boat's rocking back and forth and it's raining, it's gonna dribble over the edge. So I don't know. There was nothing on the bottom of the door before, so I don't know what to do. I gotta figure that out. But that's down the road. Next thing I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna see where I want to put the hinges. They're gonna go. Top one's gonna go up in here somewhere because I put these two plugs. Two screws here, so the hinge is probably like in this area here, and then at the bottom it'll be down in this area somewhere. All right, so here we are on the outside, and looks pretty good, I have to say. I'm liking it. So my shop isn't exactly a woodworking shop. It's not set up for it. So everything I do, I have to kind of cobble together. So we're working on this lock set in the door. I just have the door clamped to this piece of framing here, which is actually holding my really large vise down there. And then after drilling these first two holes, and the door went flying, as you probably saw in the video. I ended up clamping this side down with a couple of clamps and a 2x6. So hopefully when I drill out these next couple of holes, things go a little smoother. Alright, well, I managed to get that chiseled out, and I stopped filming because I was getting frustrated with it. It was really difficult to do. It's so narrow. I mean, the door is so narrow, there's no room on the edges. And I suck at chiseling anyways, and this was my first time doing this kind of a thing, and man, I was stressed out, so I had to shut the camera down. But anyways, just get it out of my way so I could concentrate on getting this thing in here. But anyways, it fits pretty good in there. I mean, it fits really good in there. But as you can see, the problem is there's hardly any wood on the sides of this thing. I mean, I couldn't have picked a harder thing to start on. And now I gotta mortise this whole thing down in like a 1/16 of an inch. So I've been watching people on YouTube do this because I've never done it before. And I probably watched half a dozen of them. And that's what I suggest you do when you do something like this. And don't watch me. That's why I'm not showing you myself doing it, because I don't want you to pick up my bad habits. But the one that I watched, I can't remember his name. He was a British gentleman. And he was very precise. He wasn't doing this. He was doing a hinge, but same basic thing. And what he did was he just would score around with a blade like this until he got it scored down pretty good, just little by little. So that's what I'm going to do. That way you're not chiseling up against this really thin area. So I'm going to do that and see how that works and go like super duper slow and try to get it down 1/16 of an inch. And I'll show you how it came out, hopefully good. Okay, well, I'll apologize for shutting down the camera on you guys, but it was kind of getting in my way. I had it set up like right here, and it was difficult enough to do this without bumping into a camera. And I could see that it was going to take me a long time to do. And I just took my time and got it done, and it came out pretty good. I'm pretty proud of myself, actually, for just sticking with it and doing it. I mean, it was so intricate. I thought I was working on a model railroad or something, not on a full-size door here. But I picked probably the hardest thing to chisel out that I could ever pick out to do. But anyways, it looks like everything fits. I'll show you in a minute. But so I got it. It's very thin. I had a little issue right in here, but you can barely tell. And I kind of filled it with some epoxy afterwards to try to fix it up a little bit. I went a little too far, but I can live with that. And then after I did it all, I put some of this Smith's clear penetrating epoxy sealer on there. It's a 2-part thing. It's a really watery epoxy, basically. And I've used it before on things. And you just keep putting it on there until it soaks in and doesn't take anymore. And that kind of saturates the wood really good. And it just does a really good job of hardening that up. That little lip is so flimsy right there. I'm so worried about even touching it. But that really helps solidify it. And then I also put epoxy on the inside of this thing. And as you can see down in there, I also filled the whole void. This whole thing was a void down to like in here somewhere from where the old lock was. And I just mixed up some regular West Systems with some colloidal silica, kind of like a little thicker than tomato soup, I guess. Poured it down in there. Well, I got lucky because there was more in there than I expected. And I guess I just wasn't even thinking. Should have done it in 2 pours because I was starting to worry about the exothermic reaction of that much epoxy. And I could feel like the wood getting warm out here. So I ended up just taking my my heat gun here, has a cold setting on it, which is just blowing regular air. And I just kept blowing air on it for probably a good half hour just to make sure anything weird wasn't going to happen. So I got lucky. I should have done it in 2 pours. I wasn't thinking. But anyways, it's done. So now this is all nice and solid down in here. There's not going to be a big void. And that's about it, and that's where I ended. So there's the piece. See, I mean, it's not a perfect fit, but it fits good enough for me. I mean, here we go. And yeah, so that's done. That part of it's done, and you can see how far down it goes. So you can see how. Oops. Camera in there. You can see how far the epoxy goes up. So there's not a huge, massive gap in there now like there was. So now the next thing to do is going to be, I made these couple pieces right here. These are mahogany. These were just like scraps I had, but they were actually a 1/2 inch thick, and I planed them down to 3/16 because the thickest thing you can do with that lock set is 1 3/8 thickest door. So these will make it 1 3/8 when I put them on there. And yeah, so they're different sizes, but they're basically meant to just cover up all the sins here of the past. Okay, so it's the next day, and no, this is not the side that I installed. I'm going to install this piece tonight. But one thing I was realizing, when I put the other piece on, I never filled the holes. I ended up waiting until the piece was dry enough that it wasn't moving around. And I flipped the door over, and I just mixed up some colloidal silica and West Systems, and then used this spatula and kind of got it down in there. So I then reclamped it up, and it dried overnight. So we were all set with that. So I figured I'd fill these holes in before I did this. So this morning I took this larger spatula. I had to trim off this left side here. I actually had to use it this way. And I shoved that in there, and that covered up the bottoms of both of those openings. And then I put this piece down on the bottom side, and then I just took a bunch of these smaller ones and just jammed them in between, kind of wedge them both against the wood on the inside. And that seemed to work. I just was able to fill both of these with some epoxy, and it's all dry now and ready to go. So I'm going to put this piece on tonight, and this piece I epoxy this end with some of that clear penetrating epoxy, because this is the end grain, and it's going to sit kind of right here like this. So this will be like a horizontal surface, even though it's got a bevel on it, but then I didn't want that to be like an end grain on a horizontal. So anyways, it's all penetrating epoxy in there now, so that should be good to go. Now, this is probably where this piece is going to go to. Now, I don't love the way these things look. I think it looks kind of weird, but I think once I get the handles on there and it's all varnished and everything, it might look better. But whether it looks better or not better, that's the way it's going to be until I build a new door some year and make it the way I want it and have it look all perfect and pristine. But I mean, everything looks weird. Look at that patch. So anyways, I didn't film installing this door or installing the hinges or actually installing the lock set, but this is the finished result. I didn't even actually film right after I did it. I'm over here in this cold snowy day filming it. I don't know if I covered any of this in the actual video. Maybe I did, and this is a moot point, and I'll edit this out, but I did have to patch up an area here where there was a hole in the actual plywood, and I put a little Dutchman here where the frame had a hole in it. It was all rotted in that corner. So that's that. There's the hardware installed. Now, it's all loose here. I don't have the striker plate on. I had the knob for this on this side, and it was almost hitting this piece of trim when I opened the door, and I like the look of this lever better. So I had a lever on the old door, hardware, with same brand. I'm hoping I didn't throw it out, because I like to put it on the inside. And yeah, so we'll show you the hinges first. Here's the hinges, all in there nicely. On this side, I'll show you on the inside. It's not so nice because there's an issue which I'll go over. Okay, so here we go. Let's go inside and check out the inside part of it. Now, there's one reason why I don't like this doorknob, and maybe you can figure out why. I would never buy a doorknob for my house with the manufacturer's label on it. I don't understand it, but anyways, I don't like this knob at all. And I'm either going to put a lever, like I said, like this one on it, or I'm going to take out this center and do something with it. I'd like to find a knob to match this one here. It's about the same size. It's very small. Like all the hardware is very small on this boat. It's almost like a toy house hardware. But anyways, there it is. Oh, I was going to show you. I didn't put the striker in yet because I have an issue with the striker. Because this is deeper here by 1/4 inch, because I put this extra piece of plywood on here, so the bulkhead is an inch wide, thick, and the original was 3/4. So this is deeper here. So the striker plate that came with the thing doesn't fit. It doesn't come out far enough to lap over this edge here on the trim. So I'm trying to figure that out. If you have any ideas, feel free to comment on it, let me know. But yeah, I gotta figure it out. So that's why the striker's not in. But the door closes pretty good. Now here's the other side. You can see where the hole was here, and I patched that in. I actually put a piece of plywood in there, and then I took some veneer off the old vanity in the head, because it kind of matched the grain, and that's what I cut and put in there. Kind of like what I did on the settee, just to blend it in a little bit. So that's how it looks. Now the inside of the hinges, it's not my favorite looking thing there, but that was another issue because the frame was too deep, so I had to kind of notch those in. I mean, they don't look terrible, but that's all I could do really. So that's how it looks. So I was gonna wait and varnish this door and then put the window in and then do the video, but just because of time, I don't think that would be good, because you'd be waiting another 3 months for this video to come out. Because I don't really feel like taking this door off right now. It's on there, and I'll show you up here what I'm actually working on. It's not here, but I can show you. It'll be easier to work on what I'm working on with this window not installed. But anyways, I'm working on the hatch that goes up on top here. And then there's a piece on the bottom of the hatch about this wide that fills this gap right here. And it's going to be mahogany and varnish, just like the door. And it just is attached to the hatch, and when the hatch goes up, it kind of is on a hinge and it kind of flips out of the way. So I'm working on that, and I think it'd be easier to work on that and figure out the hinges for the hatch and all this kind of stuff before I varnish this door. So this isn't going to get varnished right now. And even if I took it off and brought it home, I don't really have any room in my shop to do it, because I'm grinding and fiberglass and things like that, and there's no non-dusty area. So that's the door, and hope you enjoyed that video. Alright, well, that's going to do it for this video. Hope you enjoyed that part 1 of the door. Sometime in the spring, probably we'll have part 2 where I'll varnish it and put that window in. But there'll be some other videos coming out before then. So till the next video comes out, everyone have a good one, and we'll see you soon right here on Renovation Sportfish.